Hey, y'all, welcome to Challenge Accepted. I am Frank, and I'm joined by Thomas.
Aloha, everybody. Ahsoka time.
Yes, we were talking episode 6. I mean, right off the bat, this episode had me hooked with that whole tell me a story. Oh, in a galaxy. I was like, oh, you got me, Tenet. You got me again. That's so
I
good.
know, right? And then it goes far, far away. I'm like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
this is incredible. You're giving us the intro to the all the original Star Wars, but now telling it through somebody who's lived through these stories.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, he's older than
beautiful.
Yoda. He's lived through them all pretty much. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cool. And I now, of course, the meta theory mind of myself is like, is all of Star Wars just being told through Hugh Yang? It's like, okay, Frank, calm down.
Oh my God. It's too late for that. My mind can't handle that right now.
I watched a lot of
What
Neverending
if?
Story growing up, so yeah, that whole like a book within a book thing is really gotten me going. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but what a great way to start the episode,
it
because we
was. Yeah.
pick right back up. And first off, we should say, like, this episode had insane shoes to fill. Because
Oh
episode
God, yeah.
five was flawless to me. I mean, just so perfect. The way they added in Hayden Christensen, the action, what it meant to Ahsoka. Like, how do you follow up that episode, right?
It's hard because I think while episode 5 was just so crazy impactful for the Star Wars fandom as a whole, I think episode 6 is that for just the Rebels fans. Like episode 6 is exactly what you've always wanted ever since you saw the finale of Rebels. And it's hard because it's following up, you know, Darth Vader. How do you follow that up? It's so tough. But I think
Right.
it if didn't have that last episode, this one would be the same reaction of like, holy cow, did you see Thrawn? Did you see our boy Ezra at the end? I mean, it's two big whammies in this one.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, I wonder if that translates for people who haven't watched Rebels and they haven't, they don't have those emotional attachments to those characters. Like we know Sabine, her whole motivation through the show so far has been to find Ezra.
Right.
And it's a pretty nice reconnection of them two. It's beautiful and all that, but
It's
does it
kind of
hit
quick
the
in my opinion.
same?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little quick. Even, I mean, it also takes a while for them to kind of embrace. Like, I expected her to just jump all over him,
Yeah, same
right? When
thing.
she
I was like,
saw him.
why are you being so coy about this? Hug, you bastards! Come on, you
I
guys are
know,
literally a
I
galaxy
know.
apart. But they
Yeah,
were really selling
exactly.
it.
It was like daytime soap opera. Like, they were really drawing out the dialogue to make that
Yeah,
embrace more impactful. But you're so right. For Rebels fans, Ezra disappears. He flies off. He's in a new galaxy. Thrawn went with him. What happened? Are they dead? Are they alive? What
yeah.
planet are they on? What condition are they in? And we finally get all that answered in this episode. And yeah, I don't know. I guess we've already kind of talked about the Ezra. Maybe we should stay on there because I
Let's do
think
that. Yeah,
the bigger reveal for me is the Thrawn of it all. So let's stick with
I
Ezra.
agree. But let's stick with Ezra for now. And seeing Ezra was great. I mean, he definitely is giving off like he's obviously older now. It's easier to see Ezra. I mean, 7 years later, so it's easier to see Ezra as this age than it was. I was like, oh, how's this gonna be a love interest? He's giving off Aladdin vibes like crazy. Like this guy's, which he was. That was kind of the whole thing, right? Ezra's always been space
Right.
Aladdin, and now he's
Yeah.
definitely giving those vibes off. And I like how he's
Okay.
living
I
amongst these
yeah.
people, which is kind of how Luke has been for a while on his little island out there. So I was digging him in his natural state now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I feel like I owe my wife $1. She's like, "Who's this Aladdin dude?" And I was like, "That's Ezra. Like you already heard him or whatever." But okay, now
Yeah.
I owe her $1 because I was like, "That's not Aladdin," but apparently he is now.
I mean, we're
Um,
introduced to him stealing fruit, and that's how he got into the rebels. So I mean, he's
that
definitely
that
street
is
rat.
true. It's a good point. That is very much a good point. Yeah, you're right about that. And yeah, maybe the garbs and everything too in
Yeah.
this one. Um, yeah, I mean it looked like Ezra. It's not. It's funny. It doesn't really. It's not who I had in mind. When you're watching the animation and stuff, things can be different, and you kind of have this idea in your head of who they are gonna look like.
Yeah.
I had to tell myself like, "Oh, that's Ezra. That's Ezra." Like I almost had to convince myself
I
of
did the
it,
same. Yeah.
right?
He,
We're
he's
like,
older now, and so that was a little bit jarring in a way. Like this guy's Ezra's always been the kid in the group, in my opinion, and now this guy, he's like the youngest brother of the family, and now this
right,
guy's clearly meant to be like. When I see him, I'm like, oh, okay, you're supposed to be the canon. The canon, you're the new. main Jedi we're going to be following for a while. Once it's, with Ahsoka, but this guy's definitely getting a spinoff. You could tell by the way they introduced him. He's going to be more important, and so it's like Ezra before is not quite this Ezra, but I think this is the Ezra that could be more embraced by the wider audience.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because one of my biggest issues with the Rebel was I wasn't the biggest fan of Ezra.
Right.
Like I liked his arc, I liked where he went, I liked how he developed his relationship with Kanan and the rest of the Ghost crew, but he wasn't my favorite in that team. So yeah, you're right. Maybe this is an opportunity for more people to embrace him and for him to be that guy that more people like.
Yeah.
There was some characters though that you just don't. I never had to think twice about. Like they were that character. Ahsoka being one of them. Sabine.
Sabine,
As soon
yeah.
as I saw Sabine in the trailer, I was like, "Yep,
Yep.
that looks great." Hera is kind of dipped and waned a little bit for me.
Hmm.
I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead is a phenomenal actress. I think
She really
she's
is.
a great choice. But yeah, like sometimes it hasn't. It has felt like Hera. Sometimes it quite hasn't. But I think I've liked her more than I haven't liked her. So I welcome the opportunity for this Ezra to be like, oh no, that's the guy we seen in Rebels.
Looking at Sabine though, yeah, she's definitely her Sabine herself, and this is the episode where we got to see her be the character we know her as. For those again who know Rebels, because we've talked about this before, you've talked about on your show, we've talked about on ours. Show us, don't tell us. This was when we got to learn that, oh yeah, Sabine's like a badass Mandalorian fighter and is working on being a Jedi. So when she was first off, I like the whole like here's a horse type character creature, go out on a
Ooh.
journey. Like that's so nice. That's so good. Go ahead.
But yeah, by the way, kind of a wolf-like creature. Shout out to Dave Filoni throwing in
Of
wolves and
course.
owls everywhere he can,
Yeah.
right? Like,
You know that thing was going straight to Ezra the way Ezra's got a connection with the wolves. Yeah.
true. Yeah, so true. But also like the shape of the animal and everything. It was like, okay, this lizard, but kind of wolf thing.
Yeah.
And man, the special effects on that looked incredible,
It had, you know what
right?
I liked is it like kept licking its lips like my
Mhm.
dogs do. Like my dogs do that all the time. And I was like, oh, he's a puppy, but he's also
Yeah.
like a horse or something. But yeah,
But also kind of a monster. And I was like, oh, that's
definitely.
my dog, Leia. Like, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm a Star Wars fan. My dog's name's Leia. But like, yeah, such a kind of crazy monster, did its own thing, shy and whatnot. But we also got some other fun creatures in here as well. We get the Noti people, I want to say. I think in the
Yeah.
subtitles it was like Noti, but they were
Oh,
basically
good
those
call.
crab creatures.
Right. Yeah, I was
I
getting like
I
turtle vibes off of them too, and they were just kind of just chilling. And it's so funny when they first popped up, I was like, I'm not gonna fall for another cute character you guys are just trying to make a Funko Pop for. And then I saw that he's wearing a little suit, like a little piece of clothing or whatever.
yeah.
I was like, oh my god, I want to buy all the stuffed animals already. Like, son of a bitch, that was so fast. It's so
Yeah,
cute.
yeah. I loved it. I was fully on board right away. She kind of started to try to communicate with the first one and she put the
Yeah,
gun down. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna dig these little dudes. And they had their
yeah.
cute little language and everything.
They got like
And
a
then their
trailer
whole
park and stuff. It's so cute.
oh yeah. They're kind of like gypsies, but yeah, trailer parkish. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're adorable. I think this was Star Wars creatures. I think done really really right because they added a little bit of something to the world, but yet
Mhm.
it didn't take anything away from the emotional connection again of Ezra and Sabine, right?
Yeah,
Or
it's
I don't
the
know. How did
it's
you feel
the
about it?
well, it's the character creation that we expected out of the original movies. Like I feel like as much as I love the prequels, they're so good. One of the problems is that every creature that came up kind of had a bigger role. They were a senator or something like that. But in the
Right.
prequels, when sci-fi was kind of this developing flower, and this version of it was something really big with an adventure, it was so neat to just see like, wow, this creature walks on four legs instead of two, or something like that. And this felt like that. Like, oh, these guys hide like rocks. They live in cool, weird, round buildings. That's all you need to know about them. I don't need to know about their political beliefs or anything like that. And that was what we got out of these guys.
Yeah, for sure. I like it too that they don't have to just be main characters either. Like
Right.
this is a galaxy, and we're talking about a new galaxy now of
Yeah.
all different types of races and aliens and stuff like that. Like if even if they're just in the background pushing a rock or whatever they do, I'm still interested in that. It makes the world feel more believable and alive. So, oh man, talking about a whole new world. Look at what is this place called? Peridia.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't catch the name.
Yeah, so I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it is Peridia. And so we get to this new galaxy. There's all these asteroids there. And in the asteroid belt, we see all of the bones of dead Purgle.
So
Um,
cool.
so cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
man, what a badass, just little way to
Shout out
implantate
to
Chris.
Lion King's Elephant Graveyard, man. It was like, oh, this is a dark place we're going to. We're
Right,
outside
right.
the Pride Lands now.
Damn, good pool, man. That's amazing. Yeah, but like, I mean, also whales migrate. And like,
Yeah,
of course, why wouldn't these males,
whales.
whales migrate? Yeah, but yeah, really cool
But
little
how
Easter.
dark is it that they migrate, but this is where they end? Like their migration leads to this place where they die, and this is where Ezra pointed them. So it's I don't
Yeah.
know. There's kind of something like a little metal about that. Kind of like what'd you convince the Purgle to do? Go die?
Do
Like
you,
how did you tell it to go in this direction?
yeah, that's I think you bring a really good question because I don't know. For me, it doesn't feel answered, but it's like because she's like, how did you know where you were going? Right? Sabine asked him
Mhm.
that, and he's like, I didn't. And I'm like, well, did he point them in that direction, or was he just like jump into hyperspace and get us out of
Yeah.
here? And then they ended up there.
Yeah,
I don't
same
know.
question for
What's your
Ahsoka.
thoughts?
Ahsoka's dealing with that right now. So I would assume it was just like I think they're activating the just go aspect, and then you go to like salmon will always go up river to the river that they came from, stuff like that. So I think it was that. I think the whales just know instinctively, well, I go this way then at some point, and so they were kind of. I wouldn't be surprised if this is where they die, but it's also kind of like where they spawn or something like that. There's something in their minds that are. So yeah,
Wow.
I'm just saying he forced them to go to the graveyard soon. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. What's amazing about that is in that metaphor, you use salmon at the start of it, and you said this is where they spawn. So I don't know if you have fish on the brain or like
Fishing
salmon
season's over and I'm
migration.
depressed.
There you go.
Yeah.
You took off your Bass Pro Shop hat, I guess. So,
Wah, wah.
yeah, yeah.
it
So
was
right,
it was a
man.
cool way to show that. I like how they like kind of flew over, and so that ring, like the ring of Saturn's just like floating bones out there, which makes sense because the pearls wouldn't land on the planet to drop their bones off there. They would just decay in
Yeah,
space and then get caught up in this gravitational pull. Oh, it's so brutal. It's so cool.
yeah. It was. Also, one thing that was probably an odd question that got answered in this is they get out of hyperspace, and by them, I mean Morgan Elsbeth, Balin Skoll, Shin Hati, Sabine, and they get out of hyperspace, and I'm like, where are they located in this ring?
True.
And I was like, how does this structure work? I mean, we're both wondering about
Yeah,
that, but
we saw them on the top of it in the 2 episodes ago.
did
they're at the
we?
top of the ring. There's like a little place for them to stand. But yeah.
Yes, in which okay, that was answered for me this episode. I
Oh,
must
was
have
it? Oh,
not
okay.
caught it, but yeah, we get to see Sabine's brought with them, and then they
Yeah.
pull up to the planet, and there's this structure, and there's three Night Sisters. Now
Oh, so good
we've
to see them. Like,
never,
oh, I'm just so happy to see
yeah,
like
in like
actual
the
Night
full
Sisters, man. Yeah.
exactly in the full garb with the face. Uh, I don't know if it's like pain or tattoos or the birthmarks or whatever you want to call it, but man, it was cool to see these Night Sisters in live
Yeah.
action.
It's got to be paint because we know two other Night Sisters that don't have them, basically. But I do like the way that they really felt like the fortune tellers or whatever they're called in Greek mythology, the ones that have the strings of fate, one cuts it, one pulls it, one does up and down. Because these
Yeah.
guys were kept talking about like the threads of fate, the threads of fate. So it's like, oh, okay, you guys are Greek mythology, and
Hmm.
so where's the Hercules? I'm waiting for that person who's going to come and break the threads of fate rule, and hopefully that comes to true pretty soon. Which we did find out Ahsoka, like they just learned that Ahsoka's still alive, so there's something there too.
Yeah. Exactly. You're so right about the threads of fate. I almost wonder if they thought the person who was going to make all this fate happen or tie it into a rope that these threads are all loose from. I wonder if they thought it was Thrawn. And I also wonder like what did they owe Thrawn to where they're helping him so much? Like I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah,
And Thrawn's never been one to push away from art or things outside of his realm. But
yeah,
it's funny. He's so practical in a lot of these ways. And then to unite with Night Sisters and this magic is really interesting concept, right? Like I don't know.
yeah.
I'm so curious about that relationship more. But before we go into it, we just have to start with all right, they are standing there on that place. The star map looking area, Night Sisters, Balin Skull's there, Morgan
Hmm.
Elsbeth, where's Thrawn? All of a sudden, out in the distance at the horizon, we see this massive star cruiser or
Oh,
Imperial ship.
it's beautiful.
Man, what an entrance,
Oh
right? And
man.
then flies right through the center of the ship where the hangar is, where the TIE fighters would drop from, and it lands right in the center of the ship, and
Yeah.
Thrawn walks right out from it on there. How badass was that?
I mean, pure boss mode, right? First off, when you see the ship and you're like, oh, those the paint underneath it, that's Thrawn's paint. And then you're like, did they find a ton of gold in this galaxy? Totally possible. Gold, that's something we've learned in our own galaxy that outside of it, there's other places a lot of gold because they use gold to repair all the places that Ezra broke with the Purgles. So you see on the edges, it's all replaced with gold. And then we meet one of the stormtroopers that are pieced together and given the Darth Vader treatment, gold. Everything's gold on him. That's the replacement metal for all their parts. And then they pan to the stormtroopers, all screwed up armor because they haven't had replacements for 7 years. And then it was just pure boss mode. And then for us Rebels fans, we heard Lars's voice again. Oh, I'm back. So good.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. I know. I love that taxi cab. We were like, "Oh my God, Lars," because it was such a great choice. And I was like, "I'm not
I
there yet."
delayed sending that to you. I like wrote it immediately. I was like, oh wait, he might not be watching it. So then I waited like a while before I could
No, I
press
know.
send.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Hey, you got wife and other things
Oh
going on.
yeah.
It takes a while to get settled to watch, but oh my God, you're so right about that. And I didn't even think about, I thought about the armor, them not having replacements for it, but I didn't think about the ship and why it was gold and not having replacement parts. But man, that is so cool. And it's visually so striking, right?
It is. Yeah.
Because we always see the good guys in white, we always see like the bad guys in dark or they're black or whatever in this black armor, and man, they look so sick and menacing, and just like they've done everything to piece these together, and that gold in between it just looks so cool. They really crushed it
To
with
me, it
that.
reminds me of a couple things. Like first off, it's exotic. It also reminds you of like, okay, so this is something from, it's outside of our world, which is exactly what the galaxy is. But also for
Hmm.
those of you guys who are into high fantasy, a lot of times there's an ancient race, dwarven race, if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, and they always have a bunch of like technology that shouldn't exist. It's like way advanced. It's the Atlantis rule, and
Hmm.
everything's in gold. And then when we see this guy, this stormtrooper with a gold face, note that it's not a copy of the helmet. It's actually like a Roman mask that he's wearing that's in gold. So I'm kind of like, did these guys develop their own little culture out here or something like that? What is going on? Were they were they the advanced ones in this new galaxy, or were they behind the ball in this new galaxy? Like, what was? Oh man, I have so many questions. I want a story about the 7 years. That's what I
Yeah.
want.
Man, it seems possible now. A
Yeah.
little interesting fact, I think, you did such a great job earlier tying things to the real world. Well, how about this? So in Japan, if you're a potter or
Yeah.
something, you break a dish, right?
Hmm.
They don't seal the cracks, but instead they fill it with gold, right? To show you that these cracks make it better, it makes it stronger. It's part of its journey, and it's called
Wabi sabi.
kintsugi. No,
Okay.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's something that burns your nose. No, this is kintsugi, and it's those gold fills in. And yeah, I just looked it up, but I feel like that's what the representation of the armor is. And we're talking about Ahsoka being a, a samurai's tale. The best of the lone Japanese warrior. I mean, even her armor has that look, like it's samurai
Yeah.
armor kind of stripped down without the outer shells of it. And when you
Hmm.
look at her feet or her gloves, it very much looks like that, almost
Yeah.
Ronin-esque or ninja-esque. And yeah, and so tying it to Kintsugi, I feel like, man, maybe it's opposite sides of the coins where Thrawn's army is showing this element of maybe Japanese warrior culture, and Ahsoka's this other side.
I want to throw in the wabi sabi is embracing. I learned it from King of the Hill. I'm not like a scientist, but it's embracing the flaws and embracing them and making them like that's why the gold lining all
Oh.
of a sudden makes it more beautiful. So the wabi sabi
Mhm.
of this is the fact that like all of a sudden like Thrawn's ship looks more dope now that it's fucked up. How cool is
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
it's
I thought you were saying wasabi, like the
no
green stuff that
wasabi.
comes in your
Yeah, that
sushi.
stuff is oh
I
god,
don't
it'll
know.
torture you if you accidentally have that.
Yeah, I thought that's what you said. My
No,
bad.
by the way, guys, do not have the wasabi jelly bellies. Oh my god, they destroy you. Have you ever had
Oh,
those
I
before?
love those.
Oh my god,
I
they're
love them.
terrible. Oh, they
I
kill
love it.
me.
Man, give me wasabi all day, all
Mm.
day. So this is a amazing kind of visual look that we're already
Yeah.
getting for Thrawn's forces. Speaking about a visual look, how did you feel that Lars Mikkelsen? How'd you feel about how he looked as Thrawn?
Okay, so first off, I want to say I think the mainstream fans are going to reject him. I think he's so outlandish. Now, as somebody who's already ready for him, that knows what the chiss look like, I would say that yeah, that's textbook how the chiss look like. He doesn't look as lean as
Yeah.
I expect Thrawn to look, which is, I mean, that's fair. It's again 7 years, add that to it as well.
That's
But
exactly where my brain went with it. It was like he
yeah,
doesn't look as trim as he was before, but you know what? 7 years, who knows what they had to eat out there, what his
right.
physical load was, all that stuff.
How cool would it be though than if he looked even more tore up a little bit? Like maybe his uniform wasn't as crisp or something like that. Like we know how crisp it normally would be, but maybe he had
Right.
like patched red sleeve somewhere, like we saw with our C3PO. I don't know. That would be kind of cool to add something like that too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I do like seeing it pristine because something about that to me feels like Thrawn. Like he's never gonna
Yeah.
let, like the ship, needs to be replaced by any means necessary, but he's not gonna let his suit fall apart.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
going to make sure it's bleached and pressed and worn perfectly every single day. His
Mhm.
boots are shiny, his belt's in the right place. Like something about that to me, it was like, wow, 7 years, and he seemingly is lost since the end of Rebels. But to him, it's just, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? He's kind of backtracked a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. He's just preparing for the next phase of the fight, really. He doesn't he and
Yeah, it's
another
like a
thing too is,
misstep.
does he know anything about the Empire right now? Does he think it's completely fallen or not? And does
Good
Ezra know?
question.
Because Ezra thinks, he's asking, it worked, right? Like, so he doesn't know that the Empire fell. So there's going to be a lot of catch up. And what is going to be the reaction of these two sides? So Ezra, I think, will be like, "Oh, sweet, no Palpatine. What a Darth Vader's gone. Wow, wow, neat." And then all of a sudden, like, "Oh, by the way, Thrawn's hitching a ride back. Son of a bitch!" And Thrawn is going to be just like going back with so much fury. He's going to want to tear apart the galaxy. And I think at
Hmm.
the end of Ahsoka's series, we're going to see her lose and him successfully escape this galaxy.
Yeah, I agree with you on that last note. Um, you are on such a good point, and shoot, I feel like I just lost it.
That's
But
okay.
it
So much stuff
was,
happened.
yeah, yeah. I'm just curious. Yep, I lost it completely.
While you think
I
about
needed to
that, I want
actually
to bring up
coffee.
this. When they arrive at first and they meet the Night Sisters, one of them, or they say, it stinks of Jedi, and then they take Sabine away. My
Hmm.
right away reaction was like, Sabine is not strong enough in the Force to be stinking of Jedi. That's Balin. He stinks of Jedi. And so whether or
Hmm.
not he's still a Jedi, we see he's questioning things. And even later on in this episode, he says, I miss the ideals of the Jedi Council and not necessarily the Jedi Council itself. I
Hmm.
think Balin's not fully non-Jedi anymore. Like he still stinks of Jedi.
Yeah, he's very gray, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, hard to say if he's on the light side or dark side. And the other thing is, we don't know what his motivation is still. Like, I found
Mhm.
myself in this episode still saying, like, why is he doing the things he's doing? Like,
Yeah.
we understand that Ezra's out there, and we know Sabine wants to find Ezra, but why does Balin Skull and Shin Hati want to follow them? Like, what could
Yeah.
it possibly be for? And then Thrawn's gonna leave them behind. Like, I just don't really understand why. I still love Balin. I think he absolutely crushed it. There was two times in this episode where he's talking to Shin, where I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, Ray Stevenson's what
I
a
know.
just powerful, nuanced actor.
Yeah.
Just the way he pauses and you can tell he's thinking about things, and the way he feels about it is just so amazing. Yeah, oh man, it's tough, but I hope we figure out why they care so much about Ezra and how does that restore power to them or
I
restart
don't think
things.
he cares about Ezra. I think he's doing his part in the agreement with Ron, but I think in that conversation he had in the middle of the show, he talks about like, well, we've heard before he says he wants power. But why do you want power? I think it's for safety,
Right.
and I think he wants to rebuild a Jedi or something like it. So not Jedi, but a light side force that's not going to make the mistakes the Jedi made. I think that's what he's wanting. And when he's looking at the landscape of the world they're in right now, he's like, this is the place for it. And we see that in Jedi Survivor, the video game. The guy you're chasing down, the one arm man, that was his goal
Hmm.
too. Literally the same thing was that he wanted another planet outside of this galaxy to create a new temple that would be kind of the safeguard in case something went wrong, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what
Hmm.
Balin's thinking too.
Interesting. Yeah, I buy it. I'm just really curious, if there's going to be some larger reveal. He obviously is sentimental about the things in the Jedi Order,
Yeah,
It probably is a little bit of a weird thing. Like he's like, our ideals weren't right. Maybe some of the things we were doing or the way we were focusing on the way we should be leading this culture is not right. But I miss what we stood for and the idea that I was a part of something important. And
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I
Really
think
curious.
Yoda admits it. Anakin called it out right away. The fact
Hmm.
that they had Jedi's as soldiers, as generals, was completely anti-Jedi. They shouldn't have done that.
Absolutely.
So I think being, somebody who's really Count Dooku called it too, actually. Like if you're actually on the ground and helping people and stuff like that, I think kind of what Balin wants. I think he wants power to create safety. He's going about it all wrong, of course, but I mean, watching Ray Stevens say any line, I'm happy with. I'll go with him. I'll join him.
Yeah.
And so I would
Definitely.
kind of like how cool would it be is at the end of this, we see that everybody goes back to the other galaxy, but Balin stays behind to try to start something new. Then there's like another galaxy out there that just has like a thing that, is its own universe. I'm cool with that.
Right, right. I don't know if you've heard about this, but recently I've been hearing this talk about the Wayfinders, and they weren't necessarily people who were Jedi, but
Hmm.
they kind of just followed the will of the Force. Whatever they felt like the
Okay.
Force was drawing them to, or whatever they needed to be done, that's what they would do. They carried
Similar to the
lightsabers
guy
and
from
everything.
Rogue One, right? The one that was blind.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Tony P or something. I forgot what
Yeah,
the guy's name is.
it's too many
But
names.
yeah, totally. But yeah, it's something along that lines, and I'm very curious to see if they really explain that motivation because I think that's a lingering thread where I'm like, okay, enough now. Like, you've
Right.
got me. I'm sold. I need to know what they're after and what he's trying. I would assume you're right on a new temple or a new Jedi Order, but if he's not a Jedi, what he's going to call it? How do
Right.
they differ from what the Jedi have done in the past? Because right now he's just very gray, right? It's
Hmm.
like I don't know what the principles of what he now believes truly are.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that the fans are embracing him because if you look at the fan art for this series, I would say number one is Balin.
Totally. I the
He's
number
soaking it up.
Yeah, number two, I would say Shin Hati.
Yeah,
Shin
yeah,
Hati has a cult of people. Like she's got her stands big time now, and
right.
she's incredible too. The way she looks at Sabine in this episode of just like I hate you, and
It's
I and
almost
I
jealousy, right?
oh, interesting you say that because I turned to my wife and I'm like, why do you think she's looking at her like that? She's like, I think she's jealous of her. I'm like, what? And I don't disagree with it. I'm like, yeah, for sure she could be jealous. But in my mind, I'm like, why would she be jealous? Like, Sabine's lost everything. She doesn't have any family. She didn't have any friends. She was by herself. She wasn't fully trained in the Force. Like, why would you be jealous of her? But there must be something there. What do you think that is?
I think I think Balin sees something in Sabine that is not inside Shahadi. I think he sees like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the Jedi's I remember. Like there's a piece of that in her. And so I think there's a
Hmm.
level of like because we see that he's so forlorn about the lost times, you might see a little bit of that in Sabine.
Yeah, well said. And I think they're really, pimping it out. She keeps throwing her hand out every time, right? She gets locked in
Yeah.
that jail, and we're talking about Sabine. She's reaching her hand out, and all of a sudden, oh, something gonna happen? No. And then she's in that kind of, I don't know what you call it, a night sister prison thing.
Yeah.
And then the rocks start crumbling, and we get Thrawn. And you're like, man, it's gonna be that Captain America moment when
Oh,
she
for sure.
finally is able to use the Force,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We
Yeah,
did see though that
when
she is a
Mjolnir flies
good
back to
fighter.
her.
I want to shout that out because it's so important to remember that Sabine is a Mandalorian and like she was of a high house, so she had a lot of training. Like that's the reason she's kind of good at the lightsaber, not because she's a Jedi in any way, it's because she knows how to use swords and she trained with the dark saber. So that whole scene where she kicked the ass out of everybody that was around her, those like raiders, showed
Mhm.
us why we should be respecting her. And this entire time, for anybody who hasn't seen Rebels, didn't know that, other than like the freeway scene in the first episode. But this was kind of the first one. I was like, yeah, look, she can handle her own. She's good.
Totally. It made me think back to was it episode 4 where her and Ahsoka jump out when they're on Seastos or yeah, I think it's called Seastos, that planet. And all those guys attack her, all those droids attack them, and she's holding her own, but it kind of looks like she needs Ahsoka's help,
He's overshadowed
you
by
know?
Ahsoka. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I felt like I was like, wow. And I kind of like it too because I was really afraid for her in this
Hmm.
episode.
Me
I'm
too.
like, her head's exposed, she doesn't have her helmet on, she's way
Yeah.
outnumbered. How's this gonna happen? I mean, she was in a way for me using the force because she kept perfectly blocking these
I was
blasts from
yeah,
her
hell yeah,
face,
bro. Totally agree.
right?
How
Oh
forced
my
was
god.
that? And she just like
That was
would be like
cool.
no look blocks. Like that's you are Luke Skywalkering it up right now. Let's go great.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, man. That was badass. I want to go back and watch that fight again because it was
Yeah.
really freaking cool. I loved it. I think this episode had a super high bar coming off of episode 5. And in this one, I think it delivered in a lot of elements. We got to see the return of two amazing characters. The
Hmm.
creatures look cool. The special effects looked good. It's definitely feels like it's setting up part 2 of the season, right? Episode 5 was this perfect middle
Yeah.
segue that crescendoed, right? It's like if you had to make a diagram for the season, I feel like it's at a pyramid right now and maybe starting to go
I would
down,
say a
but
lopsided pyramid, but hear me out on this real quick. We only have two more
okay.
episodes of an 8 episode series. We should have had the Anakin episode at like episode 3, and this should have been episode 4, so that we have more to go. I feel like, man, we only got 2 episodes, and
Yeah,
you just showed Thrawn and Ezra. It's so hard.
so true. Yeah, I think it's tough. This show had a lot to set up and had a lot to catch people up on. I honestly have
Yeah.
not had a problem with the pacing, and I think this is one of the best Star Wars shows. Again, like my top two would have to be in recent years, The Mandalorian, no, Andor and this. And
Ooh,
The
really?
Mandalorian season 1 was great. I think season 2 was okay. I thought season 3 was less okay even than that, but I liked all of them. I liked all of them.
Yeah.
I just loved season 1 of the most. But Andor to me has been like one of the most incredible Star Wars shows. And then this feels more like the original movies or the prequels. Like it
Yeah.
feels more of like this heart of Star Wars where you get the funny characters, you get the emotion out of it. There's stakes in the lightsaber battles. Like the
Mhm.
action's cool. We're seeing things we haven't seen before. So when you mix all those things together, it feels more nostalgic in a way to the original Star Wars than maybe
Yeah.
Andor does. But
Yeah.
that's what's amazing about what they're doing with the show.
This movie definitely this there you go right there. This show definitely feels more like a movie than anything else. And I think like The Mandalorian is so perfectly serialized where it's a new planet, every adventure is different.
Yeah.
Boba Fett felt like a spinoff and kind of bad because of that. And then Andor, I think, could have been like a spy thriller movie as well, but it's kind of its own beast. And really, I can't believe people don't watch that. It blows my mind. But yeah, this feels like this is a new Star Wars movie. And if you guys wanted to, you could have just thrown it in theaters and we would have been happy with that there too.
That's true. Yeah, I feel it sucks because I like love how much content we're getting from this though.
Right, right.
Like this definitely could have been a movie. I don't know how you tie that into larger audiences to catch them up, but
You couldn't.
yeah. What's that?
You really could. I mean, people just need to watch Rebels already. I'm so tired of people
Oh
not
yeah.
knowing what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they did, we really wouldn't have a lot to talk about week in and week out. But it's like,
Fair.
yeah, it's nice, and I understand the animation part of it was hard, and I still
Mhm.
think people should go back and watch it. But if you can't, like, I kind of get it. That season 1 of Rebels was tough, but again, what you get from series is you get time with the characters. You get to
True.
invest in them. You get to see where they fail, and yeah, we get to see where they rise. And I think this in this episode it was a big opportunity for Sabine to rise, show who she is, really what she cares about. All right, now that she's got Ezra, now what? Now what do you do?
Yeah.
How do you? And she also didn't tell him that he's like, it worked, right? Right? And she goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Why is she lying again? And this is 100% going to bite her in
Well,
the
it
ass.
worked. No, it worked. What he did worked. They're outside of the galaxy, and the Empire fell. Like everything worked well at this exact point. Afterwards, we know shit's gonna go bad, but right now everything's good.
It's true. But I feel like she knows Thrawn is getting ready to get out of there.
She doesn't want to tell him that bad news. Yeah, that's true. But that's like not like it did work. It's just withholding the truth. My, I'm concerned. What I'm really concerned about is now that we have Ezra, I don't want Sabine overshadowed because
Sure.
in Rebels she was constantly overshadowed by Ezra, and Ezra was the main character, so that makes sense. But he's not in this one.
Yeah. I think my thing with Sabine is I don't feel like this redeems her character yet. Like we know she just
Right.
doomed the whole galaxy that we're familiar with. Like
Yeah.
they're screwed. Thrawn's
Yeah.
coming. He's got his own force. There's a lot of people that are still loyal to him, and she's found Ezra, but that they're of course I think gonna escape the galaxy. But let's say they didn't. This doesn't redeem her character.
So true.
She
Yeah.
she's still Star Lord at the end of Infinity War. She hasn't
Yeah.
gotten to Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yet. She has screwed the whole galaxy. Like so, I don't know. I
And Ahsoka and
yeah.
Hugh Yang mentions that too. Mentions that like, oh, your concern is that she made a decision based off herself, not off of the greater good, which is what a Jedi should do. So yeah, it's definitely a question that's going to need answering at some point soon.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think we get that answer in this series, or do you think we get it later on down the line with the Dave Filoni movie or something like that?
No, I think it's going to be kind of a reunion moment between her and Ahsoka that will have to it'll have to be answered right there. I think
Mm-hmm.
I you can't move
Interesting.
forward without that. I mean, she
Yeah.
I think Sabine needs to do something really impactful to hinder Thrawn's plans. You can't stop Thrawn. Like Thrawn's obviously going to be the new Vader, but you need something big like that. So hopefully something good
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Really good one though. I mean,
Yep.
again, I think they did a hell of a job. I was not expecting episode 5. Just there was no way it was going to get to the heights of that episode.
Right.
But what I think we got, I was very happy with it. I think it filled us in where they left off in episode 4. They answered more questions. They moved us down the line while still keeping us intrigued for the rest of the season. At least for me,
Mhm.
man. Yeah, another great one. Another great one in
I
the
For
books.
listeners at home, if you are not a Rebels fan, I want to hear your opinion on today's episode because it's so Rebels based, and especially your opinion on Thrawn. What do you guys think about Thrawn? Let us know. Hit us up on our social medias. We're on Threads, Twitter, and TikTok now too. We keep doing posts over there. Let us know. Instagram, there's the other one, and we'll respond. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us this week. Unfortunately, Thomas is going to be out for a little while again, but that's okay. We got
Hell yeah.
Jonathan stepping up to the bat for those. And our next episode is going to be on Big Fish. That's coming out on Friday, which was a
Hmm.
very big surprise to me. That's a different movie than I expected, but I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Oh gosh. You'll hear me say 1,000 times it's my favorite movie, and you just get to hear me gush over it the whole
That's your
time.
drinking game
So
right there, guys. Take a shot every time you hear that's my favorite movie.
yeah, exactly. This is 100%. You're gonna be drunk in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. All right, guys. See you next time.
All right, aloha.